Welcome to the Promise ICASA satellite session, co-hosted by Promise IPM and the World Health Organization. This session will introduce you to the ring. We will give a product overview and provide end user perspectives on the ring. The session will focus on looking at choice with Professor Issac Mwanafunzi, followed by Leonard Solai, who will talk about and give information about the ring, followed by a provider's perspective with Dr. Felix Malanga, and this will be followed by a ring user's perspective and input from Ruth Nahurera. After that, there will be time for questions and answers. I'd like to introduce you to our first speaker, Professor Issac Mwanafunzi, who is going to talk about expanding choice. Is a reader, associate professor, and Director of Implementation Science at Wits RHI. She's a medical doctor with a PhD in infectious disease epidemiology. She's currently overseeing a portfolio of programs at Wits RHI addressing introduction of innovative approaches and technologies for HIV prevention and sexual and reproductive health. She has supported oral PrEP introduction in South Africa and currently serves as a principal investigator on several trials evaluating integrated service delivery to young women. Issac, over to you.
Greetings, everyone. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to present some slides to stimulate discussion on how we make choice a reality as we think about introducing new HIV prevention products, and to remind ourselves that the act of choosing speaks to more possibility, opportunity, and empowerment. It's a fortunate time for the HIV prevention field because more prevention options are on the way over the next few years. The Depoverine intravaginal ring is likely going to be the next product entering the market, having been submitted and approved for regulatory approval in some countries. There are other options like the 8-weekly long-acting cabotegravir injectable and multi-purpose prevention products like the dual prevention pill, a combined ARV and oral contraceptive to prevent both HIV and unplanned pregnancy, as well as other long-acting oral, injectable and ring options, which might also be available over the next few years. We know there are many questions and issues to resolve around existing and new HIV prevention options, but why do we care about choice? We know that we'll not be able to rely solely on universal test and treat. We're behind on prevention targets that need to work synergistically to make an impact on HIV incidence. We know that no single method will work for everyone all the time. Programs are going to have to balance less effective and simpler options with more effective and perhaps more complex options to deliver. Lifestyle and relationships are dynamic and circumstances change, so a single method may not be a lifelong choice. We also need to introduce and support new choices in a way that normalizes HIV prevention with more products. Many individuals who need oral PrEP and start PrEP have challenges with daily oral pill taking and discontinue, so we need new modalities that are easier for people to use. We aren't starting from scratch here. There are lessons to be learned from contraceptive programs which have decades of experience with delivery of a range of different long and short-acting products with different efficacy but also different characteristics. One of the key lessons we've learned from a large multi-country analysis of contraceptive data is that the use of contraception increases when more methods become available. Expanded choice needs to focus on HIV prevention plus contraception plus STI prevention. But remember that the PrEP ring is not a contraceptive. There are many lessons that we've learned from contraception, including a better understanding of the barriers to uptake of methods, as well as the health system's barriers. We know that provider competency is important and that expanded choice improves uptake and continued use. We also know that we need to make efforts to make sure that services are friendly for young people. So what does choice look like? Options need to be available, guidance needs to be in place for providers and users, and there needs to be choice of where to get services in the most convenient ways. Providers and users need support and knowledge and the ability to choose, to stop, to change and restart methods without inconvenience and judgment. How do we make it real? Making choice real requires answers, information, and access across the value chain, from planning and budgeting, supply chain management, to finding out how best to reach people with services and support users and communities. Program managers might need information on costs, impact, and which populations to focus on. Healthcare providers on how to provide safe, quality services and messaging, and clients have a range of needs to enable informed decision-making. Products will be different, and choices are not just made on the basis of efficacy. For each product, stakeholders across the value chain will have to understand and balance efficacy, dosing, side effects, the most effective and cost-effective delivery channels, and lifestyle preferences. Some clients may prefer something very effective or a product that requires fewer clinic visits or lab tests or no injections. It's never going to be just the product, but the program. This table summarizes some of those key considerations for oral PrEP as well as other near-market products. For example, the oral pill is now familiar, user-controlled, and available, but requires daily pill taking, has some side effects, and might be less discreet. The Depoverine ring is again user-controlled, longer acting and more discreet than oral pills, but people are less familiar with it. It has lower efficacy, and some women don't feel comfortable using a vaginally inserted product. So there are going to be trade-offs that are going to be made by end users all the time. In conclusion, many questions remain around new methods with regard to uptake, motivations, and effective tools. We need larger real-world implementation experience with these new methods in different settings to understand uptake, patterns of use, and operational issues. We need to understand how users and stakeholders weigh up options. It's not just about efficacy. We also have to realize that biomedical prevention sits within the broader HIV programs and is not a vertical program. Based on lessons learned from oral PrEP delivery, we need a range of delivery channels to reach those at substantial risk, need to integrate with sexual and reproductive health services, and build on these to develop tools and resources that enable clients, providers, and policymakers with resources to enable choice that can be adapted as more choices become available. I'd like to thank the PROMISE Consortium and partners, as well as USAID, for funding this work. I'd also like to thank Christine Torrison, Holly Burke, and Morgan Garcia from FHI 360, and Elmarie Breedenhan and Melanie Plina from VITS-RHI for their inputs. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce you to our next speaker, who is going to provide an overview about the ring. Leonard Salai is the Vice President, Product Access and External Affairs at International Partnership for Microbicides. He's worked in the HIV sector for more than 20 years and has extensive experience working in both Southern and Eastern Africa countries mostly affected by HIV. Leonard is a passionate Depoverine ring advocate and is excited about working to ensure that the ring reaches women who need it most. Welcome, Leonard. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Leonard Salai from the International Partnership for Microbicides. I'll give an overview of IPM's Depoverine ring, a ring that is in an exciting phase as it undergoes regulatory review in several African countries and where rollout is imminent. The Depoverine ring was developed by IPM, a non-profit product development partnership founded in 2002. So IPM's mission is to develop HIV prevention products and other sexual and reproductive health technologies for women and to make them available and accessible where they are urgently needed. So the need for new HIV prevention products for women is huge and is urgent and unmet. We all know the alarming HIV statistics, especially for adolescent girls and young women. The Depoverine vaginal ring is a flexible silicone vaginal ring containing the non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitor, an antiretroviral drug called Depoverine, given royalty-free to IPM by Janssen Pharmaceuticals. The ring is self-inserted, discreet, sits high up against the cervix, and slowly releases Depoverine over 28 days. Thereafter, the ring is removed and a new ring is inserted. The ring is well suited for warmer regions like sub-Saharan Africa, where no cold chain is needed and has a long shelf life for up to 60 months. I will now address the efficacy and safety of the Depoverine ring. Phase 3 clinical trials on the ring were conducted in Malawi, South Africa, Uganda, and Zimbabwe, where a total of 4,500 HIV-negative women were randomized, women aged between 18 and 49 years of age, to a placebo ring or to the Depoverine ring. Overall, across the studies, the risk reduction was about 30% in the active arm. Adherence to the ring during the studies was at about 80%, and in neither study were any safety concerns noted with ring usage. Following the phase 3 studies, open label studies were conducted and enrolled a total of 2,400 HIV-negative former phase 3 trial participants, and they were all offered the active Depoverine ring. As we have seen with oral PrEP, adherence and effectiveness appear to increase in the subsequent open label extension studies to about 50%. This is likely because women knew that the ring offered some risk reduction from HIV infection, and they were able to use the ring as directed. Adherence to the product increased to over 90% in the open label studies, suggesting that once women knew they were using the active product, they were more likely to use it consistently and as prescribed as well. This shows that with increased adherence in the OLE studies, there's potential for higher risk reduction with ring use. The ring then entered an important regulatory approval phase, and many of you have heard the exciting news. In July 2020, the European Medicines Agency, or EMA, announced a positive scientific opinion for the ring as an HIV prevention option for women aged 18 years and older. In January 2021, the World Health Organization, the WHO, recommended that countries offer the ring as an additional HIV prevention choice for women as part of combination HIV prevention. While these steps are critical, it doesn't get the ring all the way. So following the opinion from the EMA, regulatory applications were also submitted to a number of initial target countries in Africa through the WHO's collaborative registrations procedure. Country applications thus far have been submitted to Kenya, Malawi, Rwanda, South Africa, Tanzania, Uganda, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Botswana, and Namibia. Depoverine ring approvals will be announced by the national regulatory authorities and ministries of health in the future. So there are a number of activities in progress that will aid ring introduction. I've already described the regulatory process. For the next critical steps, a number of partners will be working together to prepare for ring introduction. Most recently, USAID made a 5-year award to a consortium led by FHI 360 to work on accelerating introduction and scale-up of new biomedical prevention products and expediting their availability, acceptance, uptake, and impact. This project, called Mosaic, will include Depoverine ring in its programming. Most countries, as we've seen with oral PrEP, would opt for pilot or implementation studies, which would guide them for larger and broader rollout as well. So to support the rollout, demand creation and education of end users is especially important. And also most critically, we know that training of healthcare workers in country is also vital. We anticipate the first pilot projects for the ring to commence in end 2020, with many more pilot projects planned for early 2022. Once pilot studies have demonstrated feasibility and the most effective implementation strategies, It's envisaged that these strategies and findings will be used for broader public health scale-up of the ring. It's really an exciting time for the ring. However, I would like to conclude by also talking about rings currently in development by IPM, rings that would increase convenience and also possibly lower annual costs of HIV prevention and contraception. So currently, results from a phase 1 study of a 3-month Depoverine ring showed that Depoverine can be delivered consistently, not for 1 month, but for 3 months. No safety issues were observed in these phase 1 studies, and there's plan for a bridging trial of the longer acting ring that would bridge the efficacy data from the 1-month ring with the pharmacokinetic data of the 3-month ring. And this is set to take place in 2022. Findings from these bridging studies would be submitted to regulatory authorities in 2023, and we are hoping that this 3-month ring would become available in 2024. Of course, timelines may change as well. I would also like to share in development that there's a multi-purpose ring containing Depoverine and levonorgestrel for HIV prevention and contraception. Results from 2 phase 1 trials of IPM's MPT ring found the ring was well tolerated, and this supported its continued development. Due to some reports of slippage, the ring's formulation has been adjusted to increase the firmness, and a phase 1 safety trial of this optimized product is planned for Q3 2021. I would like to acknowledge IPM's donors. Without them, this work would not have been possible. Thank you.
The next speaker is going to give some personal reflections of what it is like to provide the ring from a ring provider's perspective. I'd like to introduce Dr. Felix Malanga. Dr. Malanga is an obstetrician gynecologist and senior lecturer in the University of Zimbabwe's Family Health Science Unit. As the site leader of the UZCTRC Spillhouse Clinical Research Site, he has overseen conduct of several phase 2 and 3 clinical research studies. He has a very keen interest in HIV prevention as well as contraception. Welcome, Dr. Malanga.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am going to share with you my experience in providing the ring, firstly to adolescent girls and young women, and also to breastfeeding women and the pregnant ones. So my first experience with the ring was in a study we called the REACH study. In this, we offered the Depoverine ring as well as the PrEP, precisely Truvada. So these young women had an option. Well, they firstly were randomized to either the Depoverine ring or the PrEP and followed up for 6 months. In the next 6 months, they could choose, well, they would switch to the Depoverine ring or the PrEP, depending on which one they had used first. The final 6-month segment, they were free to choose either of the ring or PrEP, or even none of the two. The other experience was with breastfeeding women. In the DELIVER study, we offered pregnant women to use the Depoverine ring. They were divided into cohorts. So we had the first cohort who were term pregnancies, and they used the ring until they delivered. Then we are actually in the middle of the lower gestational age cohorts, and this study is continuing. In the Be Protected study, we offered the Vagina Ring to women who were breastfeeding between 6 and 12 weeks at enrollment. The women had their concerns about the ring, and one of the concerns was what kind of ring are we going to be used when they came for screening? How flexible is it? Is it hard enough to cause bruising? Would it interfere with sexual pleasure? Would their partners be able to feel it? I would use the ring because I think it's discreet, and you don't have to refill it. Once it's inside, you can use it for a month without having to refill it. What does it mean to us as providers? It's useful to have the actual ring to show to the women when they are about to use it. Women who had experience with using the tampons or the female condom were a bit more familiar with what a ring looks like, and it seemed to me that was easier for them to manipulate it and use it. So we need to build on this experience to say, if you come across somebody who's used it before, it's a selling point and it's easier for them to get friendly with the ring. When they came for enrollment, initially there was a bit of hesitancy in setting it by themselves, because we offered them the opportunity to try it after the demonstrations, and when they really struggled, we would then assist them. It appears to me that people who had used the ring, who had used the ring either as a condom or had used the tampons, were a bit more user-friendly to the ring compared to those who had no experience. We also noted that the pregnant women, because of their belly size, sometimes they struggled to get into a position where they could insert the ring. To the providers, we need to be patient and provide further reassurance and demonstrations so that women can be able to insert the ring without necessarily having assistance from the clinicians. For the pregnant women who had huge belly sizes, it's important for us to encourage them to explore other positions. We had a small booklet that would demonstrate how to insert the ring in standing, how to insert the ring lying down, how to insert the ring squatting. Clearly, some people would find one of these variations a bit more user-friendly and would encourage them to use that. It is at this point important to then say, you can have the discussion to say, this ring doesn't provide protection against STIs and is also not a contraceptive. So it's useful to begin that discussion. We move forward. The concern about possibility of bruising was raised because it's typically thought of as a foreign object. That's the impression I got. The other challenge I saw was it appeared like all sorts of abdominal pains were now being linked to the vaginal ring in place, even when it was very clear to us as clinicians that maybe this is an infective process and not necessarily related to the ring. It tells us as providers that we must be prepared to face the participant or women's fears, explain to them what the ring does and what it doesn't do. And we used our experience in the 2 studies called Aspire and Hope, which were the prototype for women using the ring, to say rings were found to be safe. There were hardly any bruisings that we noticed, and it didn't appear like it changed sexual pleasure. And we also felt that we do need to revisit the insertion technique with those who may be struggling and assist them further if they needed this guidance. I think as we plan to roll this ring, we need to pay attention to audiovisual gadgets in assisting women to insert the ring successfully. That's the first point that I gleaned. I think we should also recognize that they have their own fears and anxieties, and these are real. But we also have real examples in previous studies to show and demonstrate that the ring is not harmful. Going forward, we need to create the ring, to create demand for the ring, but we should perhaps include some frequently asked questions so that we preempt the concerns that women in the community may have. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what my experience taught me in providing the ring. I thank you.
Our final speaker is going to give some personal reflections as a ring user. I'd like to introduce you to Ruth Nahurera. She's a member of the Infectious Disease Institute, KCAB, and a proud member of the Global Community Advisory Group. She has shared her ring user experience globally. She is a former study participant who took part in the Aspire Phase 3 trial and Hope open label extension study, 2 studies of the Depoverine ring conducted by the NIH-funded MTN. She participated in both studies at the Makerere University, Johns Hopkins University Clinical Research Site in Kampala, Uganda.
Greetings, everybody. I'm glad once again to share my story about the ring use. I used the ring in 2 studies, in Aspire study and in the Hope study which was open label, and through that I maintained use of the ring. So my fears were, as a first-time user, I was scared of uncertainty. I didn't know what it was, what it would feel like. Secondly, I was scared about its composition because it was not known to me. For example, I was like, would this work? I looked at it, I felt it, I pinched it, and I would look at it and imagine, would it work? Would it protect me from HIV? So would it be felt by my sexual partner? Then would it hurt me? Would it cause me to bleed? I was asking myself if it would change color or shape, or if it would fall out and disappear. That was the first time, the fears that came into my mind the first time I used the ring. But then they went over time, as you'll see through the discussion. I also want to share about the support and the gaps, the support that I needed. The support was to answer my fears because there were many, they were uncertain, and then I didn't have a person to look out to who has used it before, for them to explain to me their experience, like how I'm doing now. So they had to give me answers. That was the first support I needed. The second was information about sexual reproductive health, which they did. Actually, they taught us a lot through the social support days when we would go, and the counseling sessions that were there every time we visited the health center. As a first-time user, I needed to know how to insert the ring and keep it in a good position so that it is stable and I won't also get inconveniences. I also needed ongoing support and counseling about the challenges, because these challenges came out with time. For example, I used to remove the ring, to check on it and see how it's doing. Therefore, I really needed that ongoing support. Lastly, the monthly visits were paramount in this journey. They were a real need in this journey because that is where we got that social support, not only the testing, but also the counseling, the answer to many questions we used to have. Then the social gathering was also good for us as women who would meet monthly and talk about ourselves and let go of some of our worries and laugh a bit. Then the financial support, I cannot leave it because it is one of the things that even brought me more closer. I was like, yes, I have my transport covered, I have my lunch covered, therefore it was also a necessity. But then these were addressed. However, there's a gap that I would like to look on. For example, many women, unlike me, had not gone to school to study human anatomy. Therefore, they often asked questions that, won't it go up to the stomach? Won't it go up to the other parts of the body? Because they lacked knowledge about reproductive system analogy. Therefore, that was a gap. I think that next time or in other studies to come, people should be taken from scratch, given from scratch information about their health and about their physical anatomy to reduce some of the myth. I will also share what I liked about the ring. First of all, it proved all my fears wrong because it never melted, it never changed color, it was never felt by my sexual partner. It was all dope for me. Then I also liked it because it was for me. I'm this person that doesn't like this hectic schedule of every day. Therefore, if I was going to choose a method to use, then I would use the ring because I would use it once a month, and that is like a dose of 1 pill a month. Unlike the other PrEP methods of using a pill every day. So lastly, but most importantly, actually one of the factors that brought me into this study was finding a discreet HIV prevention method, because in our society, you cannot just do things on yourself as a woman without your husband's consent. But female-controlled HIV prevention methods have not been existent before. You have to negotiate with a man to use the male HIV prevention methods, and he won't agree. So the fact that I would use it very well and it wouldn't be felt by my partner was one of the things that I most liked about the ring. And So what I think that should be provided for the new ring users in the future is detailed information about the Depoverine ring. They need information because we don't have a reading culture here. Therefore, the testimonies are like video clips and messages. Another thing that I think should be provided is a longer acting ring. For example, a 3-month ring. That would be a better option other than carrying the 12 rings. Then the other one would be a ring with multiple functions. For example, we are into family planning. So if the ring can do both HIV prevention and family planning, then that would be one admirable. Then lastly, accessories like ring bags. You won't feel bad about what you're carrying in your bag that look neat and smart. I really want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to serve and empowering me to serve. I do not take my participation in the ring studies for granted because it has also impacted my life alongside other women in my society. Thank you very much.